So just so everyone's aware, we are currently live on Facebook and also recording, and this recording will be on afterwards. Okay, welcome everyone to part 2 of the panel. And for those of you who came last week, welcome back, and welcome to those of you who are new this week. So I'm going to introduce our panelists real quickly. So Laurence Berland was an engineer at Google before he was fired with 3 of his coworkers over the 2019 Thanksgiving holiday. He advocated for the rights and protections of the LGBTQ community, the end of Google's contracts with the Department of Defense and Border Patrol, and other issues of equity in the workplace. He remains active in the organizing efforts at Google and elsewhere. Welcome, Laurence. Jay Flowers works at the JFK 8 Amazon warehouse on Staten Island, where he has been increasingly involved in the protests and walkouts over Amazon's treatment of frontline workers. He has been fighting to win greater safety measures for other warehouse workers and the right to remain at home for those with pre-existing medical conditions. Flowers puts his health and his job on the line every day that he engages in this work because he has seen firsthand the power and necessity of worker engagement. And finally, Grace Reckers is an organizer with the union OPEIU. She focuses on new organizing campaigns with workers at tech companies and nonprofits, having most recently been on the Kickstarter campaign and currently working with employees at a few other tech companies. Reckers is on the steering committee of the NYC Tech Workers Coalition, where she seeks to bridge the labor movement with the rising organizing efforts in the tech industry. So welcome all of you, and thank you all for being here. Just before we start, since this was not in the intros, did I get everyone's pronouns correctly? Just read them off the bio.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so just some introductory questions. What do you all think why do you all think that organizing in your tech workplaces is important, and what motivates you to keep doing the work that you're doing?
Anyone? I'll go first. So the reason is Amazon is $1 billion company. They make millions and billions of dollars throughout 175 warehouses with 750,000 warehouse workers from days to nights. In my case, like she introduced, I have a medical problem. I have lupus nephritis, and in my health condition, I'm at a greater and higher risk of catching this coronavirus. And I'm fighting for workers that have pre-existing health problems. So with me fighting right now in this with the pandemic, protesting and fighting against Amazon, there's a lot of people who are afraid to stand up and be retaliated, scared to speak up, scared to speak out on their voice. So in my turn, I put my job out, I put my voice out to help everyone who's afraid to be retaliated and let them know that we all have a voice, even if you fear that you're gonna be retaliated, that I'm here to support, my team's here to support, and that if you have any pre-existing health problems, you're not alone, and most jobs will retaliate.
I guess I'll go next. My reasons for organizing at work were pretty simple in a sense. You know, there were things that I didn't like about the way my company was treating me, the way my company was treating my coworkers, the way my company was treating its, users, customers, the world. And we weren't making progress on those issues anymore by having polite conversations about it with management. And individual action isn't getting it done. So collective action can do things. And in particular, collective action can take those of us with less privilege and let us support each other, and let those of us with more privilege use that privilege to support those with less. And we are all a lot stronger together than we are alone. And if you think everything is okay in your workplace, in your world right now, then you definitely don't need to organize. But everybody else, it's not going to get better if we don't make it. And this is how we make it.
And again, my name is Grace, and I work at a union, so I'm not currently organizing my workplace, but I work with people every day who are organizing their workplaces to form unions in their job capacity. And what I see every day and what I find power in doing is recognizing that there are workers who might have minor grievances at their companies that they work at, that they deal with every day. And like Laurence said, like we all have those things that maybe bother us on a day-to-day level, but then there's some people who are, you know, enduring pretty catastrophic things or have some pretty serious grievances that make it hard to do their jobs. Regardless, building power within your workplace is, you know, not just about resolving those nitty-gritty details or overcoming one major obstacle in your workplace, but it's about building power amongst your coworkers that is long-lasting and sustaining, and that actually contributes to a larger labor movement. And I think why I find the power in building these unions at your workplaces and, you know, building up the labor movement is because people don't experience problems just in their immediate workplace or just when they go to the office or just when they're, you know, getting their paycheck. But a lot of the problems they deal with also contribute to their life back home or to their life with friends. And I think that a lot of the problems that we see within greater communities can be something that organized labor can take on.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for the work you do. What is something that you all consider a win over the last year in your organizing efforts?
I'll go first on this one, I guess, because my answer, in a sense, is pretty simple. It's a little bit of a cliche in organizing circles. If they retaliate against you, if they harass you, if they fire you, you know you're winning. So I guess, in a sense, the big win for me was getting fired, because it meant that what I was doing was something that they couldn't figure out what else to do about. And it's unfortunate in one way, because the other thing they could have done was actually do what me and other people were asking them to do. But the fact that they felt like they had to fire us tells me that we were doing the right thing and that we need to keep doing it and that everybody else needs to do it too.
They saw you as a threat.
In my case,
not me, us. That's the thing.
In my biggest win, it was actually two things. So on May Day, May 1st, we actually had the vice president of Amazon, Tim Bray, step down and said that what Amazon is doing is ridiculous. And at the same time, we actually had Amazon stocks go down 8%. So that was the major win for that day. Yeah, the two major wins we had that day.
I think so. As Raksha mentioned in the beginning, I was working on the Kickstarter campaign, which was one of the tech companies that formed a union this year, and it formed a union in February. They won their union election, and oftentimes people point to that as a major win for tech organizing, and I agree. But I think actually most recently, when we started to bargain over the layoffs that were happening at the company, was, to me, felt like a almost more powerful win, because it showed not only that unions are important, but it showed that the power of collective bargaining can immediately play out. So Kickstarter won their union in February of 2020, and then just about a month ago, the company announced that they are going to be laying off a significant amount of the workforce. And rather than the company having full control to do so without any sort of checks or regulations or any sort of input from the people who do the work every day, the company had to sit down with the employees who are in the union and actually negotiate the terms of the layoffs, which was huge. And that's something that we haven't seen happen in the tech industry. And I think it's really important because a lot of companies in tech are going through major layoffs right now, like any company. But I think we're seeing it in tech particularly right now because there can be large groups of workers, and actually having the ability to negotiate over the terms of those layoffs is incredibly important. And it doesn't just mean that they can't be laid off, it just means that they had a say into the severance packages, they got recall rights, they ended the non-compete agreements. So I think those are big wins that happened pretty immediately after they actually formed a union.
Yeah, all of those are huge and amazing, and they were so different from each other. It's interesting to see what the different union campaigns versus non-union organizing has accomplished across the tech industry. So on the flip side, what are some setbacks you've all experienced, and do you have any advice for people who might be in the same situation?
I can go first. So I think on this one, what's challenging, and I don't think this is necessarily particular to the tech industry, but it is something that's related, is that we all increasingly we're using things like Slack or like Google Drive, or we're using maybe some other platforms, Microsoft Teams, whatever it is, to communicate with each other. And your office might use one of those as like a workplace communications platform. And while that is all well and good and that helps us stay in contact with one another, I think one of the major challenges is finding the dividing line between being able to communicate with your coworkers about company issues and also like starting to have some of those agitating conversations when it comes to organizing, but also being able to bring that off your company platforms and get into more of a one-on-one conversation with coworkers that has to do with some sort of organizing effort. And the challenge is that a lot of those conversations need to be taken off company platforms because, you know, oftentimes if a company sees that you are talking about any sort of organizing activity, it can put you at greater risk, like in Laurence's case. And so I think Laurence can, you know, probably have more to say on that, but I think leaks and having information be shared in a more secure way has been a major challenge that we've just seen become increasingly the case.
Yeah, I guess I might as well pick up where that left off. Obviously, a big setback is the same as what I see as a big win, which is getting fired. That certainly is a little bit of a complication. And before I kind of talk about some of what Grace was saying, I do want to say, you know, make sure that you're cognizant of what's at stake for you and what risk you can tolerate. You know, it may look sometimes like people are not thinking these things through, but at least in my case, I was pretty careful about when I was taking risks that I knew put me at risk of firing and making sure that I was in a position to be okay with that. You know, if you are worried about a visa that could get you thrown out of the country immediately, or you are not going to be able to pay the rent at the end of the month, you know, look at your situation and say, is that something that is worth risking right now? There are ways you can contribute that don't risk that. If not, but then again, you know, Jordan and his coworkers will tell you that, you know, if you're not sure you're going to live through the work week, all of those things maybe are worth the risk anyway. So, you know, when it comes to things like platforms, you know, this is one of the differences from union organizing. In our situation, you know, I don't think any of us really thought we were, you know, like months away from a union at Google. You know, when you're doing like a card check, you keep your mouth shut. You take that off that platform. When you're running a pressure campaign, when you're running a support campaign, when you're trying to get your coworkers to sign letters and take visible actions and you're trying to get press coverage, well, sometimes you have to be more visible actually than you would be when you're trying to get those union cards signed, because it's a different kind of pressure. And I think that's like an important difference to keep in mind, but sometimes doing that involves visibility. And one of the biggest wins that I think we had at Google was, you know, everybody who was on the panel last week got to meet Ben, who with his coworkers unionized. They all work for a contractor named ACL. They work inside Google's Pittsburgh office. And I think they were technically the first like desk workers in tech to unionize. And I was very proud to be able to help support that. A lot of people in the organizing community who are, you know, employed directly by Google work to support that. You know, we didn't have a chance of getting a union at that time, but they did, and it was really important to us to do that. And some of us were very visible in doing that.
So,
but got to be careful.
Yeah, with my setback, I'm actually still not fired. I'm actually on the verge this week of getting fired from Amazon. This is their form of retaliation. I don't know if you guys seen, they fired Chris Smalls on live TV. They fired one of my other friends, and they also have one of my other friends, there's 4 of us, on a final write-up. They had no way of firing me because I have no rate. I haven't been in there. I haven't got paid. Let's start off by this. I haven't gotten paid for almost 4 months by Amazon. I've been out, around 3 to 4 months now. This is their form of retaliation now. They just went to the point and said they're going to try to fire me this week. So with that being said, what Laurence said, I took it upon me because I have a medical problem. I choose my life over making $1 any other day. You can make $100 easily just by working. You get your normal pay anyway. You're getting paid unemployment right now. Like I said, in my job, it's non-union, so Amazon, in any type of way, shape, or form, Amazon can fire you by whenever they want. You could be their best worker, never late, always on time, never took a day off. They can fire you if they want to, just because they're not unionized. Like I said, in my case, I ended up staying home 3-4 months just because my health, with this pandemic, I can't be around anyone. My warehouse has up to 70, 80, maybe even up to 100 right now of coronavirus cases that they're not even being aware of or taken care of. They're just sending people home through the back door. We like to call them sending home through the back door without telling us. Even though we understand HIPAA laws, you can't give us the name. You still have to let us know what department he worked in or she worked in, and we have to quarantine whatever station they was working at. They didn't seem to do that. So back to me. The setback was I actually had to stay home 3-4 months without getting paid to fight for them to at least give us a clean workspace, which they still haven't done yet.
Wow, yeah. So if I can just dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So Amazon's been doing really well during COVID, basically. What does that mean for workers on the ground?
We all know it's lies. So what they do was their luring tactic. They put out a commercial out stating that they're wearing face masks. We're sending essential items. We're not essential. I mean, we do mail stuff. You can consider that, but we have not sent one essential item. Even though we do send the face masks, the vitamins, whatever really is essential, Amazon will lose billions of dollars on any other product, like Echo Dots, any other product. They will lose billions of dollars on. So that's their luring tactic. They'll say we're sending essential products, but we're really not. Even though in a sense we are, they will lose billions of dollars. Also, with that being said, it's not much of a ground win for us. You know, we can't say nothing to the media. We can't talk bad against Amazon. We can't mention union. So it's another shape or form that since they're not unionized, it's another way of firing us. So they kind of have us in a sense where when you're on our time or when you work for us, you can't mention anything about that until you're on your days off. But even on your days off, they have power to reach their arm out and still try to fire you. So with the groundwork, that's their luring tactic to make sure customers are going to keep ordering, saying that they're protecting us. In rare cases, right now we have in total 9 deaths throughout the United States of people who tested positive in Amazon warehouses that ended up passing away.
Terrible. Can I ask, Jay, have you seen any, because I know that, you know, Bezos is making a lot of money right now as the company. Have you seen any of that, or any of your coworkers, have they seen any of that wealth come down to the workers?
No. So first off, I want to say they did give us the $2 raise, the $2 hazard pay, and the double pay overtime. But most of that money is going to him to buy an AMC movie theater, which he's looking to right now. He's trying to monopolize and take over. So most of the money we're giving him is just for him to take over and not really help us.
So a lot of the people who I think are tuning in are tech workers on the desk side of this kind of work. Have you worked with Amazon workers who are in the offices, or like have they shown solidarity, or have they been in the warehouse movement at all?
Yeah, so I know at least from Tech Workers Coalition standpoint, so again, I'm part of the Tech Workers Coalition, which we have a chapter in New York City, but there's also chapters across the world. I know some people in the chat have also commented from other groups. So we've been looking a lot at like how we can build that solidarity between the workers at tech companies who are working in the offices, and then people like Jay who are working in the warehouses, or even people who are working, like, you know, Amazon owns Whole Foods. So looking at people who are working in retail at Whole Foods or at other places like that, Instacart, whatnot. And I think we have seen more of at least within the last several months during COVID, but also before that, there was a growing awareness of the importance of that sort of solidarity across the different types of workers who work for these companies. And I think it's not only because they work for the same company, because oftentimes there's solidarity between, like, you know, Google workers, Amazon workers, Instacart workers, but I think it's also because people realize that, you know, these companies have such large reach and such a wide grasp over the platforms that we use, that we're all complicit in it, right? Like, whether you like it or not, you're probably going to be participating in Amazon's platforms, whether it's on AWS servers, or you're going to be operating on Google's, you know, servers or whatever. And even for smaller companies, we're seeing that reach. And I know we can talk a little bit more later about like some of the broader efforts, like with GitHub or Microsoft or whatnot. But I think it's not only because people work for the same company, but I think we're starting to see people realize that like their work not only impacts themselves and their teammates or their coworkers, but larger society that we haven't really grappled with until recently.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of following up with that, I definitely think that there's been a push on the tech industry to, I know a lot of students have been organizing around no tech for ICE. So companies that are openly doing work with ICE, like Amazon and Palantir, are getting like boycotted at student career fairs, or students don't want to accept scholarships through them. CMU students have organized like an alternative scholarship so that they don't have to accept Palantir money, things like that. So I know that there are some solidarity efforts across the industry.
And, you know, at Google, organizing has tried very frequently to focus on that sort of cross-industry, cross-function organizing. It's actually kind of almost impressive to me. It's almost hard to think of anybody who I've met through organizing at Google who hasn't almost immediately brought up the conditions of, for example, the people who clean the office or cook the lunch. You know, Google has done a really good job of legally separating things out by employer. All of those people work for other companies. Google has a contract with those companies, but I think Google workers in organizing have been unwilling to let that line be anything but a legal fiction, you know, because to all of us, those people in the office, no matter what they're doing in that office, no matter what they're doing for that company, they are all Googlers to us. They're all coworkers to us, you know. If you want to get, you know, more DSA about it, they're all comrades, whatever word you want to use. You know, these are, you know, all people kind of working together on the same thing. It doesn't really matter whether you're writing code or, you know, roasting broccoli. Like, you work there, you work there. And obviously these companies don't see it that way. But I have to be careful when I say really specifically, you know, like that those folks in Pittsburgh were the first desk workers, because, you know, Google security workers in places, you know, frequently would already be unionizing even before that. And a lot of us in Google organizing tried to support that as well. And, you know, in all these cases, I hope these people would have been successful without, you know, my support or the support of the people in, you know, the organizing meetings that I was attending. But maybe not, I don't know. And it's important for us to all stand together. And, you know, you see the pivot. I think it's really like impressive to see it at Amazon, especially, right? You know, we sort of heard through the grapevine before we ever met people in the, like, you know, like software and design kind of side of Amazon for climate change people, that they were sort of inspired by people at Google's commitments to things like, you know, opposing the drone war and CBP and things like that. And then to see what happened when, you know, everything starts happening at the warehouses with COVID, and see them turn around and stand up immediately for their coworkers in the warehouse, you know, that's exactly what you should be seeing. And I can't say I expected anything less from them. They're all amazing people. But that's exactly what solidarity is, right? You know, if we're not all here for each other, then who are we here for? Because we're all going to need each other.
Yeah, I think that's a great pivot to a question that we have in here for you. What should someone be doing if they don't currently work at a tech company, or if their company is not in a place to organize?
Well, if you're at a company and it's not in a place to organize in terms of organizing a union, figure out what it is that's going on there that you care about and organize around that. You know, people get caught up in the terminology. Is that organizing? Is that activism? I don't know. I'm not a labor lawyer. You know, when you get fired, you get to ask the labor lawyers what counts as what. But until that sort of thing is happening, you know, I don't really make a huge distinction between the need to have like a union at Google and the need to stop Google from supporting the Defense Department in, you know, killing people in Pakistan. You know, those are two issues that a lot of us care about. And shouldn't we be able to do that? But the truth is, you know, that's part of our work too. Because to me, if your work is part of something, you know, if you work at Amazon, whether in the warehouse or in the office, you know, and you're sending out all these packages and creating all this carbon dioxide that's killing the planet and is going to kill all of us and change life for humanity, you know, that affects your workplace, doesn't it? You know, or you're complicit if you don't stand up for that sort of thing too. And you know, this is what I was saying before, recognizing that some people have more privilege to stand up for those things than others. If you can, you kind of are obligated to, in my view. You know, you have to do something. But also, you know, if you're not working at a tech company, you know, you can always accept invitations to talk on panels. You know, but, you know, keep working on the outside. You know, being on the outside, the upside is I can say things that people inside the company can't, right? What are they going to do? Fire me? So not something that I worry about as much right now. But also, you know, in these times, a lot of people are asking, you know, what can I do? And you can do things outside of your company too, and they feed back. You know, the reason that I'm wearing this shirt, I don't normally wear bright orange shirts, you can't really see it, is I volunteered to help with a community testing effort in my neighborhood. It was the first effort to test the whole census tract. And, you know, at first it just seemed like another interesting thing to do, something I thought was like personally important. But when you start to see what the people running the study were concerned about, they were concerned about the impact of privilege, of race and class on how this virus is spreading. And seeing the results, you know, the most interesting result to me that we found was that 90% of the people who tested positive in the area are people who leave the house for work. So it comes right back to the same issues that you're thinking about at these companies anyway. You know, like the world is very interconnected. And so if you're fighting for, you know, for justice and solidarity and the rights of, you know, ordinary people the world over, the distinction between what's inside and outside of your employer is actually a fictitious one to me. You know, like that's the thing, when things get serious, it doesn't matter who you do or don't work for, does it? You know?
Yeah, I'm curious what you said earlier about, you know, what's the distinction between organizing to form a union and organizing to, you know, end some sort of contract with Tech for, you know, no Tech for ICE or that sort of thing, or contracts that they might have, you know, with Department of Defense or whoever. And I'm curious for both of you, because both of you are like, you know, this panel is about kind of broader organizing efforts. And like a lot of what I think about when I work with people who are organizing their workplace around a union is like, what are the main issues, both like on a day-to-day level in your workplace, whether it's salary, whether it's equity, whether it's transparency, or, you know, healthcare, whatever. And some people have some like less tangible plans about the company's practices, like you were talking about, Laurence. And same thing with you, Jay. Like, obviously, your companies have practices that you might object to. So I'm curious, like, how you both are dealing with that, because you are part of these broader organizing efforts that have to do with like solving these larger social justice issues. But there's obviously some sort of union involvement as well.
So honestly, we didn't look for a group. Me, Chris, Dirk, and Gerald, we didn't look for a group to help us. It was honestly, we just got together because we always hang out after work. We just decided, like, you know, we needed to make some demands to the general manager to let him know that we have issues and these needs to be straight right away. It was just supposed to be a warehouse thing with the GM and us. And like I said, they retaliated. They actually ended up firing Chris Smalls. So, you know, when we unionized our first protest, it was only us four, honestly. We had our doubts. Chris and Derek were sitting in their room thinking that it wasn't gonna work. Me and Gerald, on the other hand, thinking that it wasn't gonna work. But honestly, we wasn't gonna back down. That us four could, you know, we could potentially start something in our warehouse, so our warehouse workers could start join us to talk to us, and they could come along. But like I said, most of them they were scared of retaliation. That we ended up talking to them under the radar and letting them know that, you know, any problems or anything guys needed to be heard, we'll be the voice for you guys. So like I said, March 31st was our first protest, and we unionized. It was only us four. It only started as us four in the warehouse. We came together. Well, I wasn't in the warehouse. I was actually home. But we all came together, us four came together March 31st and protested. And after that, we ended up having like 50, 60 people walk out that day. And we actually had other people just started joining us. And, you know, we just grouped up, started working, and we just started making our movement even bigger than it was.
Yeah,
you know, I think that it's very common for these things to be organic, right? You know?
yeah, I was just gonna say that, like, it seems like both of you picked up small things that you were passionate about that you thought were the right thing, and then it built a movement out super organically. It's not like you set out to be like, okay, this day we're gonna get this many people to walk out and we're going to make a huge statement to Amazon corporate. Like, it was very natural because everybody felt so similarly to you, even if they weren't saying it out loud.
And I think what also helps in these sorts of movements as well is that there is, like we talked about earlier, there is some sort of sense of solidarity within this industry. And it's not just because a lot of people, at least that I've interacted with, have either worked at other tech companies and then now work at a different one, or they have friends or peers who work at some of the others. But I think there's a strong sense, stronger than I've seen in other industries, a strong sense of wanting to keep track of what's happening at other companies and what sorts of activism is happening. And I think as we're seeing this excitement and this sort of attention to, not only protest movements, but also, like Jay said, Tim Bray resigned, that like made big news, and it was something that was circulated amongst other tech workers and people who are at comparable companies, because I think people started to realize that like this is not something that's distant and that is only at this separate organization. I think people started to make it more relatable and realize that like this is something that can happen at our company or my company. And I think that's why we're seeing a bit of a spiral effect, which I think is really powerful. Because Laurence said it's all interconnected, and like once we see those connections, it's really important.
All right, so I'm gonna move into the submitted questions because we are in the second half of the panel now. Just want to remind everybody that we are taking questions in this form that's been posted in the chat. Wes, could you post that again? And if we don't get to your question tonight in the next 30 minutes, we are going to send a follow-up email with answers to all of these questions that are more fleshed out. All right, so first question. I know tech workers have experienced serious union busting efforts in recent years, especially at places like Google. What is the status of that right now?
Well, I lost my ability to keep close track of the union busting efforts at Google when I was fired, which was probably part of their motivation for doing that. But for those of you who don't know the story, at some point last spring, probably about a year ago, we don't know exactly when, Google hired a notorious union busting firm who in particular have a history of big wins crushing nurses unions. That's like kind of the thing they brag about the most on their website. And I'm serious when I say brag. They're really proud of that. And they hired that probably in response to, some of the most visible early organizing at Google, like the Google walkout. And it looked like the reason that they did that was probably because they had to make some significant concessions that a lot of people cared about in response to that walkout. They retaliated against a number of the organizers of that walkout, including two people who've spoken very publicly about that are Meredith and Claire. But a lot of people experience retaliation that has been less public too. And, was that something that was started before the union busting firm was hired, or was that kind of their first move? I don't know. But they made some pretty direct concessions to that walkout, and I think they didn't want to do it again. And I think they maybe even wanted to roll some of it back. And they said, "Oh, we're not good enough at this. We need help." So what are those people doing now? Probably signing contract renewals with companies like Google who want to keep doing more of that. But that's okay, just like firing me, that's another sign that that we're all winning. Let their presence be a lesson. It says you have to stay on top of it. You have to really, keep your game on point, because they're going to get better, but we're going to get better too. And as long as they're willing to write checks to these people who cost a fortune. I think Ben said that they were paying several $1,000s an hour to the union buster that HCL hired to have meetings with him and his colleagues. The fact that they're willing to write that check tells you that you're succeeding. So, don't be afraid of these people. Be smart about them, but,
right, because it shows you like how much they see the risk being of, if they're paying thousands of dollars an hour, they see that the risk of you actually collectively having a voice being much bigger.
If they think they don't need those people anymore, that's when you should worry about what you're doing.
Yeah, Grace, do you have any thoughts from the working at a union side of what those firms are doing and how tech workers should be responding to that?
Yeah, so the group that Laurence identified, IRI, is, like I said, notorious for being or union avoidance, as they call it. Another firm is called Jackson Lewis, and that's another one that is also infamously anti-union. And what they sell themselves is being able to help companies avoid unionization or avoid any sort of organizing efforts that are occurring at a company. And how I see it is often like, it can go as far as aspiring people or retaliating against people. But typically, and I don't want to get too much into the union stuff because we talked about that on Thursday, but typically it often looks like a company saying like, we're all a family, we have an open door policy, you can come talk to us whenever. We don't need what they call a third party. But at the end of the day, like when you are organizing, it's about you all. Like I'm an organizer and I work with groups that sometimes have hundreds of employees. I'm never going to be the one who can like organize your workplace. That's going to be you all. Because I don't work there, I don't know everyone, I don't know what your job looks like every day. My job is to help you, walk you through those steps, and because I've been on campaigns, I can help guide you through that and connect you with other groups who are doing the same. But it's about you going out and talking to your coworkers and having the one-on-one conversations and actually building that power yourselves. So we'll hear them talk about the like union being a third party or coming in, and that's something that we fight constantly. But otherwise, just like intimidation tactics are pretty strong. I know that actually there was we were fighting with Jackson Lewis over contract negotiations at another company, and I've sometimes been like tweeting about what the company's been doing to the workers, and I got a notification that the company actually added me to a list that they're like using on Twitter to track what I tweet. So it's just like things like that that are sometimes like intimidation tactics, but at the end of the day, that I felt, like you said, Laurence, like I felt more empowered by that because I was like, oh, they're taking notice. This is getting attention. And so I ended up just telling the workers on that campaign, like, we need to be doing more of this because they see it and they feel threatened by it.
Okay. For Jay, why is Amazon doing away with their appreciation bonus of $2 extra an hour from June onwards, and what does that mean for organizing?
So them taking away is, that's just on them. Honestly, I can't answer that, but I can tell you, me and my team are fighting for these workers to keep that $2 raise. That these workers deserve it. These workers have children, families, that they're putting their lives on the line every day. That with this coronavirus, raising in the warehouse, communities, public transportation, that they need to be appreciated. That they should be able to keep this $2 bonus.
Yeah.
See, this is a great example of what I mean by you get to say a little bit more when you don't have the job anymore. I can say that they're probably cutting that bonus because they don't appreciate you all enough.
And I know they don't. They don't like me.
All right, so we have a few questions in here that are somewhere along the lines of, when we talk to tech workers about unionizing, we have this idea that it's a cushy tech job and that's not what unions are for, or that's not what organizing is for. We don't need it. What is the strongest argument against that? And why do tech workers need to unionize?
I guess as somebody who formerly had a cushy desk job, I should talk about that first. So one, you have coworkers whose situation is not so cushy. And for me, seeing that very clearly goes back very, very far. I used to do volunteer first aid on Google's Mountain View campus a long time ago. And I remember incidents where people who worked in the kitchens had, slipped and fallen and were more concerned about an ambulance bill than they were about their spine. And, maybe that was not something that I had to worry about sitting at my desk, but, this was a person who worked in the same building as me, about 100 feet away from me down a flight of stairs and served me lunch every day. And they're a coworker and things didn't seem so cushy for them. But also, one of the people who was one of the first people to really inspire me in thinking about this at Google was Erica Baker, Erica Joy on Twitter. She and a coworker started a salary spreadsheet about 6 years ago to point out that how cushy the job was for some people was not as cushy as it was for others. And there were some interesting patterns around lines like race and gender and citizenship that determined how cushy the job was for people. And is that okay? I don't think that's okay. And the way that Erica got treated versus a white male co-organizer of that spreadsheet itself kind of speaks to that. They did not get treated the same way. For those of you who don't know, Erica is a black woman, and the white man and the black woman did not get the same response to having created a spreadsheet together. And I think that that says a lot about what it really means to be cushy. You know, is it a cushy job? Sure, but are you supposed to take whatever you get and just be happy with it, or should it be fair? You know, and is it fair that we have like a cushy job at a desk while somebody doesn't? And what happens when something goes wrong in your life? You know, when you get sick, is it still so cushy? When you and a manager have a conflict, is it so cushy? You know, there are a lot of, you know, everybody thinks it's not going to happen to them until it does. And if you wait until something is happening to you to have that union, well, it's a little bit late, isn't it? You know, you don't wait to like buy, you know, Band-Aids until you've got a cut on your hand. You're going to bleed all the way to the store. So, you know, it's really important to be prepared. It's really important to recognize that just because your conditions are, you know, good compared to the person with the worst situation in the world, that doesn't mean that it's good enough, right? And to be blunt about it, and I'm going to get some crap for saying this, compare your situation to your CEOs, to your shareholders who own most of those shares, to those people getting the hundreds of millions and even billions of dollars at the top. Does that really seem fair? You know? And I promise you, I will get crap from people for saying this right now, because people will say, well, you should be talking about the people who are making a lot less than you, not the people who are making a lot more than you. But I think both are important to keep in mind, because at the end of the day, the reason that we have so much trouble in this industry is that Amazon is headed by the richest man in the world, right? He gets to make the decisions. He has a controlling vote. Google, the co-founders of Google, who are not as rich as Jeff Bezos, but still some of the richest men in the world, the two of them together have the controlling vote. They make all the decisions all by themselves. And even if you think they're making the right decisions at some particular time, is that guaranteed? Who's going to get to make the decisions instead? What do you do when their decisions change? Should so few people have so much power over companies that control the lives of all of their workers, all of their customers, and frankly, most of the world? And if you care about your company's impact on the world, you know, you need to organize for that too. And when you're talking about, like, you know, some of these lawyer things with, you know, what's going on with, you know, the NLRB and things like that, maybe some of these distinctions matter, but as a person who cares about what's going on in the world, is that what it's about? And that's part of why a union is not necessarily the be all end all, right? You know, a union in the sense of like under US labor law may mean one thing, but a solidarity union crosses all of these lines. And that's really important, because if you care about the impact that your company has on society, on your city, your country, your world, you know, you're not going to get that changed by shouting. You know, even a VP at Amazon quitting, it's a great win, but you know, his quitting didn't magically fix things, and he's a relatively powerful person at that company. You know, we fix things collectively because they can't ignore all of us. They need us. They don't need me. They don't need you, but they need us.
Just to add on what Lauren said, yeah, I mean, that's honestly all true. Don't feel like, you know, yeah, Jeff Bezos takes care of executives. Even though he gave us medical benefits when we first start, he looks out for his executives before us, honestly. Like I said, we had 9 deaths in the warehouse, and we probably only had about 10 to 15 warehouses shut down out of 175. The other ones that got the shutdowns because the France government shut them down, and the one in New Jersey was shut down because of the senator. But otherwise, if he says the business has to stay open in operation, he's the only one that gets to have that say. And the executives is just going to agree with him.
So next question. We have many different movements going on, but each seem to be inside a single company. How can we build a unified movement that spans multiple companies, especially during a pandemic?
Isn't that what we're doing right now?
I was gonna say, I feel like, yeah, I think this is something that, I mean, we've seen issues come up about, we've mentioned larger issues of whether it's ICE, whether it's Department of Defense, whether it's the environment. I know that there's, there's groups of people at some bigger tech companies, Google, Microsoft, whatever, that are working on, those companies' impacts on the climate. But there's also budding movements that are happening at smaller tech companies. But I think something when you look at like the climate walkout back in, what was it, like October, November, whenever that was something that was organized by, people who had like different connections at Google or whatever, but then people from all different companies came out and participated in that. And I think we've also seen like there was a like hashtag tech solidarity thing that was trending on Twitter, where people at different tech companies and even just allies of some of the movements that were happening were posting pictures of them on Twitter that said, tech solidarity, or we stand with the workers in the warehouses at JFK 8 where Jay works, or there have been some other ways that people have shown that sort of solidarity. And I agree, I think it's what we're doing now.
Did you ever encounter folks in membership actively trying to separate people or act uncomradely, and how was this handled?
Jay, I'm curious what that looks like in the warehouse. Because I know that you all have been doing, organizing walkouts and whatnot, and that's a really big deal. So I'm curious, like, how other people have responded.
That was actually a good question. I'm sorry, repeat that. That was really a good question. That caught me off guard. Yeah, repeat that.
Yeah, have you ever encountered people trying to separate people or act uncomradely in the movement, and how was this handled?
Not within the group, yes. But so funny story, our first protest, we actually, like I said, it was successful. We actually had one Amazon manager step outside at the end, and before they even fired Chris Smalls, there was a dude on the blowhorn that he threw his information out like wildfire, that Christian Smalls had coronavirus, that since we're in close contact with him, that we should all be quarantined, and that we shouldn't trust him, that he's lying. And it kind of I thought about it, not to go against him, but it was the fact that he did all of that just for the fact that that same manager was in the same office as Chris Smalls. And we kind of yelled at him back. So he was like, if we're all supposed to be quarantined, why are you managers not supposed to be quarantined? If you're saying he tested positive and he was in the same room, what are you guys not being quarantined? Y'all still in the warehouse working. Another one was Amazon executives, there was a leaked message through Vice. They said Chris Smalls was not smart. First of all, it's unorganized and not articulate. So right then and there, we thought it was a plan for him to say, we don't know what he's doing. So we just did what he wanted him to do and then stopped doing it. You see, like I said, we had 50 to 60 people walk out. That was one. Two, you fired him on live TV. So I'd rather believe a news network saying that you just called him unorganized and not articulate than someone who just did something successful to say that, what he just did was smart and articulate. And you're trying to just make us seem bad now. You're trying to make him look like a bad man on live TV that millions and billions of people watch every day. So what you're really doing is you're bashing him, but all you're really doing is making him look better. You're really just improving my team on what we're doing. So every time they're trying to disprove us, which I said all the times that they tried, they all failed. What they really just came down to was trying to fire us one by one now. And that's how they're trying to get at us.
So there was a follow-up question in the chat that I think is really worthwhile asking. Frankie asks, what can workers, tech or otherwise, in New York City do in the short to medium term to show solidarity and support Amazon warehouse workers? What do you need from us right now? And how can we contribute to your campaign, Jay?
So there's a few things actually I want to say. If you're ever free, I mean, we're protesting again soon. Stand with us. Show that on the customer level, even though you're not an Amazon warehouse worker, just being in the community, Amazon being a big time company, stand with us as a customer, or just as a person that wants to show solidarity. Two, this goes for customer base also. Limit the orders. As I mentioned, 175 warehouses. we all tested. I can't say we all did. Let me rephrase that. All warehouses had positive cases, so that the virus can live on cardboard for more than 24 hours. We're delivering a virus to your doorstep. And being that before Amazon, I worked in retail. I love working with customers. I don't want to hear that a family got sick or that an employee got sick delivering a package. And even before customers in the warehouse, there's one more in the middle. We have UPS, FedEx, the United States Postal Service. We also give them packages to deliver you guys. We don't want to hear that one of their workers got sick from delivering one of our packages. We want to limit the order, understanding that, like, I even order for myself because of my medical condition, that if I really have to order it, I can. But if I can go to the store right now and pick it up, best believe I'm going to walk to the store and pick it up. I don't want none of my coworkers getting sick. I don't want to be passed along through my department to the next department, to your doorstep, to hear that, you know, a parent is sick, a kid is sick, even the fact that Solidarity, a Google worker, could get sick. We don't want that to happen. You know, it's starting to go down now in the world. The virus is starting to go down. Even in New York City, it's starting to go down. So that's a great sign. But we just don't want to deliver to a customer's doorstep to hear that rate now that was going down, to hear that now it's going back up. And a fun fact that is, I live on Staten Island. Our warehouse caused 25% on Staten Island of most of our coronavirus cases. So most of our cases, yes, that's a fun fact. Most of our cases throughout all the zip codes, it really came from the area code where Amazon is working at right now. Well, stationed.
That's not a fun fact.
That is not a fun fact, but it's a fun fact that, you know, it's the sense that our warehouse is actually the highest in the network. Let's start off with that. Out of the 175 warehouses, we're the highest. And to be the fact that on Staten Island, most of our cases come from is from that area code where the warehouse is. So that's also a scary fact. I don't want to say fun fact. That is a scary fact that just kind of proves to us, saying that we're delivering it to the tri-state area, to New Jersey, the 5 boroughs, Connecticut, whoever. Remember, we also deliver to other warehouses to be shipped out to your community. So we're not just shipping through our tri-state area, but we ship it to your warehouse, and we ship it to your doorstep, or they're shipping to your doorstep. So just limit the orders, just protect your family, and if you really have to order, make sure you open the packages outside your house, throw the box out immediately, and whatever item you get, item or items, be plural, disinfect right away. Just disinfect, and then wash your hands immediately.
Okay, as we're getting to the end of the time, I just want to say I'm not ignoring the questions that are really technical questions about union building. Grace, Wes, and I are going to send out a follow-up email with booklets and real resources about union organizing and like technical definitions and labor law stuff. So I'm not ignoring those questions. That will be in a follow-up.
There's also a cool starter pack that Clarissa Redwine and some folks put together.
Yeah, Clarissa, can you post that?
Yeah. That's a great little starter kit if you want to like ready-made pack to answer those questions and start organizing your workplace. Definitely suggest you order one of those.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll send that out as well.
I think I ordered that from Kickstarter from Clarissa after Clarissa was already fired by Kickstarter or something. So.
Okay. What resources have you leaned on outside of your local unions? What actions can local DSA chapters take to help their local labor struggles?
Well, when it comes to resources, I know Joe is on this chat, I've seen, and I know that, so Joe works for Labor Notes, and I'm a big fan of their resource publications that they put out about either like how to have a one-on-one conversation, or even just like how to file for an election, or how to interact with the bosses campaign. And it's not just about union organizing, it has to do with all these subjects, because having a one-on-one conversation and knowing how to inoculate your coworkers is something that you need to do in any organizing campaign, whether it's in a workplace, whether it's community organizing. And for those of you who don't know, inoculation means preparing your coworkers and yourself for what the boss might say, to kind of counter your actions and to try to lessen the impact of your work. So, like in a medical sense, inoculation means getting a little bit of a disease or a virus so that your body learns how to combat it in the future. So when it comes to an organizing campaign, it means that you're getting a little bit, like a little taste of what the boss or the press or whoever might be antagonistic to your organizing efforts might say, so that in the future, you can recognize it, you can anticipate it, and you can see through it. And so anyway, the Labor Notes has some great resources on that. But I know, just as someone who works with companies who are trying to organize unions or protest activity or whatnot, DSA, Tech Action, which Raksha is a part of, has been really crucial to building solidarity. I'm also obviously with the Tech Workers Coalition, and we do a lot of work around supporting workers like Jay at Amazon, or we do a lot of some solidarity work, but we also hold trainings and workshops on some of these topics. But figuring out like who in the community is tapped into this, because oftentimes, and I'm a strong believer in coalition building, and I think once you start to identify who are the other leaders in your community who is working on this, they're going to have like endless supply of resources, and that can be people to talk to, or publications, or lessons or videos and whatnot.
Yeah, just a little bit before the pandemic struck, workers in San Francisco for Tartine, which is a bakery with, I guess now back down to 2 locations because of the pandemic, announced their unionization campaign had begun. They had like a really great card check, and they put out the call to, among other groups, DSA out here. And a lot of people, we all just showed up at their rally, and then, to show support, to show solidarity, to show that the community is behind them. And then they said, now we're going to go ask some people to put up some posters. Can you help us, go out and do that? And a bunch of us went out and asked, other local businesses, can we put up these posters? And so it's a very practical thing to do. But then later we found out, Tartine was hiring union busting firms to bust bakery workers. And, having that conversation with people in the community, other business owners, other business workers, other business customers, putting those signs up is like a form of community-wide inoculation. Before we even knew that that's what maybe we were doing. Maybe some of the people there were more clued in than I was, and knew at the time that that's why that was so important. But there are opportunities to support. You don't have to work for somebody to support them. And so if you are a member of an organization like a DSA chapter, you can ask your other members, your leadership, to support campaigns too. Some people at the organizing lunch that I used to attend at the Google San Francisco office organized. We walked over once to like Facebook to support their cafeteria workers organizing. We walked over to the ICE building to protest against the detention camps, and you can organize your friends, you can organize your DSA chapter, you can organize your workplace to support people in other workplaces, in non-workplace issues, in whatever is important, and this is the way we've made change in this country for a very long time, and we need to get back to it more, and I think that's kind of the message that I want people to take away, that solidarity doesn't end at your employer, your job function, your house or whatever. Like, it extends to your whole community, your whole society, people at other employers, non-employment issues. All of these things are connected, all of these things are important. And there's like an infinite number of things you can do to help people. And the first step is usually asking them, like, saying, what you're doing is so important. I want to support you. How can I help? And they'll tell you. They know. You heard Jade say exactly what he needs and his coworkers need. Just ask. People are afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask.
All right, so it is 8 o'clock. So I am gonna wind this down. Just wanted to remind everyone, we're gonna leave this question form open for another hour. So any questions that you add in there, any resources that you request, we will send it out in a follow-up email that Grace and Wes and I are gonna work on. Other than that, thank you all so much, Jay, Laurence, and Grace. Thank you all for the work you do, first of all, and then also taking the time to share it all with us tonight. We really, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
I just want to put out one other thing really quick. One group that's not represented in this panel that I want everybody to keep paying attention to is gig workers. In particular, please pay attention to Instacart shoppers. They are getting treated pretty badly, pretty much constantly, and they need our support too. So
Mhm.
please think of them as part of this community too. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, when we were starting to put this together, we had like a long list of all the different people that we wanted to include. It was, yeah, there's a lot, like we said, this is all tied together. So trying to tie it all together is means that we had to like make sure our list was small, but I agree.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't mean that it was like an exclusion. I just want people to be conscious of it. You know,
I agree.
Your Instacart orders, your Uber rides, your DoorDash
important.
dinners, those make a difference too. You know, those workers will tell you what they need to when they say boycott, listen to them. When they say what they need, listen to them. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Stop the recording and then close out the Facebook thing while people